Hello, this is Asa Simpson from my AP English Language Journal review. So I'm going to start with the very first poem we did. This is Sonnet to Science. And for this, something that I gleaned that I thought was really important about myself was that I like to read poems slowly, and I kind of learn them best if I go line by line, as you see here. So I kind of like learn them best if I think about the poem line by line, based on like what I'm being told on face value, and so that helps me understand the poem the best, and that's my reading style that I choose the most. Yeah, so so then I start a long day's journey into night. The first one, right away, I took Nabokov's lesson to heart by fondling details as he quotes throughout the intro of the story, and I kind of like got a lot of details about the setting, which helped to kind of establish a picture in my mind of what the house looked like, and what the and kind of like what the setting was like, so I could kind of put everything in perspective in a way. So I kind of use that to guide me through my reading. Then for another for the next part, I realized that right away I realized that there was something off about Mary. I immediately thought she had some kind of mental illness. This is the second point now. But I kind of like, something that's important is I kind of gleaned that there was something wrong with Mary right away. Obviously it turned out to be her drug addiction, but at the time I just noticed it right away. So I think that's an important thing to note about myself, is that I can often pick up on certain topics really quickly. And then finally, finally, I right away I realized that Tyrone never really seemed to take full accountability for his actions. Right away he, even like with the snoring, which is such a silly thing, he wasn't taking accountability for it. He was just kind of denying it and saying that it was Mary's imagination. That kind of continues throughout the rest of the play, is that Tyrone never really wants to take accountability, and neither does Mary. No one really wants to take accountability for their actions. So that was somewhat of a theme throughout the book, I think. So next point is as soon as they started talking about the spare room, and how Mary went into the spare room without, here are my thoughts here. So as soon as Mary went into the spare room and everybody was worried about her, I immediately thought the spare room might be some kind of symbol for whatever is wrong with Mary. Maybe it triggers something. Maybe there's something off about it that is kind of like important. So I kind of thought that might be a symbol of something. But then I later realized, as I reread, that that this is more of a metaphor, kind of like pertaining to comparing Mary's being okay and being fine, not having any issues with her drug addiction, to kind of like being on the other end of it, where she's kind of succumbing to her drug addiction in some way. So yes, that's something I picked up right away there. So right away, I kind of like pointed out that Edward's illness, like his actual sickness of consumption, that they find out later that it's consumption, is kind of like, here's my notes by the way, it's kind of like symbolism in some way towards Mary's illness in a different way, because her illness is that she has a drug addiction, and Edward's illness is that he has consumption. So as Edward gets worse, I pointed out, and I connected my 2 points here, as it's right here. So as Edward gets worse and he gets more sick, and everybody kind of comes to the realization that he's really gonna be sick and he's gonna have to go away and such. It's kind of like Mary is also getting more and more sick, and it becomes more and more evident that she is gonna be going back into perhaps a relapse or something like that, or maybe she is doing drugs again. So anyway, after, and then I pointed out again, after reading and going over this section again, I tried to kind of like reread lots of different parts to kind of like factor in, gain a greater understanding as Nabokov suggests. So after reading go over this section again, I can see that this may have, at this point, it may have been Mary justifying her actions when she starts talking about how it's not Jamie's fault that he's so cynical and that he's so upset all the time. It's just how he was brought up. So I think maybe she thinks that about herself as well, that she thinks that she was brought up essentially like the wrong way, or incorrectly in some way, because and that's why she has a drug addiction. And all this is making a lot more sense. Something that's very interesting is all this is making a lot more sense. All my notes that I've written are making a lot more sense as a result of rereading and having already read the book and going through them again, for understanding more and to get more details. So that definitely is something that I've learned about myself, is that as I go through things again, I can kind of realize more and more about my own thoughts the first time reading. And that's also connected to Nabokov's suggestion that good readers are rereaders. So everyone should reread books and to get more detail, and to truly understand what the writer is trying to get across. So then next I kind of took two things. Everyone is always kind of like on eggshells around Mary. This is right here. And they're kind of like in general, they try to stop fighting. And I initially thought that this was a result of her being a woman, I tried not to think about the time period too much, but it was pretty evident that this is in an older time period where women were respected a little bit less. So maybe they were trying to calm it down because she's a woman or something. But then I later thought about it, and I realized that Mary's nervousness and her anxiety might be partially to blame for her drug addiction. It might be somewhat of a coping mechanism that Mary uses to kind of get through her nervousness and not be so worried, and kind of let go of everything. And then throughout this whole book, I've been I didn't think about it till kind of the end of the reading, but I never, as I point out here, I never really understand the characters of the maids. They don't. I'm not sure how they play. They factor in here. I'm trying to find the actual point where they say that, but yeah. So I never really understand the full point of why the maid characters are in the book. I'm not sure why O'Neill made the choice to put them in, because as Nabokov suggests, everybody, the writer does everything for a reason. Nothing is done without a reason. So this is the top point here. So I'm still kind of stumped out as to why Eugene O'Neill added the characters of the two maids in there, because it just seems like they're kind of in the background, but they should show up at some point. but they just don't like contribute any major points that I'm aware of as of first and second read. So that might be something I need to get some further help in development for. So then finally, so then Mary, this is Mary. Mary acknowledges the Mary hates doctors, and I initially thought it was just because she didn't want to hear the bad news, but then she later states that she actually blames doctors for her drug addiction. So maybe there's something to do with doctors had something to do with her drug addiction, and things like that. I think maybe her, like, once again, I think this also connects a little bit to the point of the metaphor between or of the connection between Mary's health and Edward's health. When the doctors start saying that Edward has consumption, Mary's kind of more and more in denial that that she doesn't have to go to a doctor, she doesn't need anybody because she knows that she's fine. So then Tyrone knows, and he points out that Mary could never, because Mary is talking about her dreams and how she wanted to be a nun and stuff like that, and Tyrone points out that could never happen. And I realized once again on the second read, that's very important. The second read has given me a lot of information. So I realized on the second read that Tyrone knows this because of that she couldn't have done this because of her drug addiction and substance abuse, and kind of like her denial of it as well. Like, once again, the theme of denial is coming back. Mary is constantly in denial that she has a problem, and that she needs help, and that and that what she's doing isn't right. So the final thing that I gleaned kind of like towards the end is kind of like my final realization at the end of the book. This is the finally at the end. I only realized, and this is kind of funny, I only realized that Mary has a drug addiction because they basically spoon-fed the information to me. I never fully understood why I never fully understood that she had a drug addiction until the very end, when they basically spoon-fed it towards me, even though I had so many hints and clues that I picked up on, but I never really fully pieced it together. And I think that's made me realize that I personally am a bit of I'm a bit of a technical person when it comes to piecing together things that happen in the future, so I'm kind of slow at piecing the hints together, although I do pick up on a lot of things if I go through the book sentence by sentence, how I like to do it. So thank you for listening. Those were my pages. You only got to see part of the actual notes. So here are just a couple of the full page. These are the full notes. These aren't my responses to my notes. So there's this one. So yeah, so that's kind of my information from the book. I thought it was really interesting, and the family dynamic was really kind of strange. I think one of the main key points is he wants to describe is that kind of a bit of a dysfunctional family, and kind of the issues that they're suffering, and then finally, and then Jamie being kind of the, I guess, the realist that every family has. Every family has somebody that's always gonna look at and a cynic, that's always gonna look at the dark side and what's wrong with something. He is also very important because he is the realist. He's the one that thinks about all the circumstances. So, all right. Well, thank you for listening. I know this is a really impromptu situation for COVID, but all right. See you later.